Whitney Place from FSA is going to introduce a keynote speaker.
Great, thank you, Brett, and thank you so much to all the organizers of this really important and timely conference and conversation. I see so many partners in the room, I'm not even gonna start trying to name all of you, but it's really exciting to get to come together and talk about, this topic that's really at the forefront of what we're working on in Minnesota Ag right now. So my staff tell me how stale this talking point is, but I'm gonna say it anyway, and I don't know if somebody has already said it this morning, but the average age of a farmer in Minnesota is 57 years old, and we only anticipate that to grow when our NASS numbers come out next year. And so what does that mean? In Minnesota agriculture, we're in transition. And I feel that in my workforce at FSA, we're kind of going through this retirement phase and we're hiring a bunch of new staff all the time. But we're certainly seeing that out on the landscape and in our rural communities as well. I think, rooms like this and groups like you all have important conversations to have with what do we want that transition to look like. And, that means what types of farms do we want, kind of talking about the conversation that just happened on stage here. What do we want those rural communities to look like? Do we want them to have a lot of people, a lot of farms, a lot of family farms out there? Or do we want, single landowners to be buying up a whole bunch of land? And then we also have to have an important conversation in Minnesota about equity and access to that land. And I know so many of you in this room are doing really important work on that. So Administrator Ducheneaux will maybe touch on some of the more broad activities happening in USDA with Farmland Access, but at Minnesota FSA, one tool that we do have in this work are our loans. And we just wrapped up a fiscal year in September, and I'm really, really proud of the work that we did in our loan making this year, recognizing that there's still a lot of progress to make. But for both our SDA, so our socially disadvantaged loans, and our beginning farmer and rancher loans, we both met and exceeded our national goals. So we're really excited about that work. We increased our direct loan making by 121 loans this year, or an increase of 27%. And we've really shortened our application, and thanks to Zach's good leadership, have developed an online process. So we're really trying to make that loan making accessible for folks. And so while there are many challenges when it comes to land access, we don't think that capital should be one of those challenges. I know that there's lots of, broader policy conversations in this space. I know that a lot of you are working on those broader policy conversations, and hopefully at USDA and FSA, we can assist where we can and sort of push the bounds of our policies to make it workable for folks. So with that, I'm really excited today to get to introduce Administrator Ducheneaux. His vision and energy that he has brought to the agency around ag financing is really, really exciting. It certainly inspires my staff to make some of this progress that we're making. And, I know he's working both on the policy level and on the administration side to try to make things better. He was appointed by President Biden in 2021 and previously served as the executive director of the Intertribal Ag Council, so many of you maybe worked with him in that capacity. He has spent his career working on improving food systems, helping folks access agricultural capital, and he still does it every day with individual producers from across the country, literally walking them through the system, which is really great to have such a hands-on administrator. And he's worked hard to respond to challenges facing Native Americans in his own community. So with that, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Whitney. Thanks to the Renewing the Countryside group for having me, inviting me out here to speak. Yes, sir. Okay. Oh, maybe Carmen wants to listen. That's good gosh. I'll just talk while they... So I'm Zach Ducheneaux. I'm your FSA administrator. I'm very particular about how I introduce myself. My phone number and email are on our website. I answer them all. Get to them all eventually. Might take a while. Have some patience. But I think we have an opportunity with the way we're doing this at the Farm Service Agency to really demonstrate an example of how public servants should serve. When I first decided I was going to announce my number and my email to every stakeholder group that I got into, my staff would send me messages on the teams where we were in the virtual environment. Then you can't be doing that. You're going to do nothing but answer calls. It's almost my damn job. So I think I'll just keep doing it. And I finally got tired of giving out cards and telling it to people in rooms, because invariably someone after the meeting would call just to make sure it was really my phone. So I had them put it on our website. And I joke with people, I say, you can't find my information, Google loudmouth Indian Cowboy Administrator Farm Service Agency. And that's where you find me. You know, I really like the topic that we've got here to talk about, change. And there's a story that I tell all around the countryside about change and how mindset is critical to change. So I'll tell that story, share a few key concepts. I'm not going to do the 6 pages of talking points that our team puts together for me. You can read all those on our press release website. I think it's more important that we have a conversation while you have your FSA leadership here in the room with you. But I fancy myself an aspiring horseman. So we have adopted a way of horsemanship that's really based on awareness, empathy, and presentation. And the short form is, if you go into this relationship aware, with empathy for what the horse would like to be doing, and change your presentation to get to the desired outcome, that's really the key to it all. And there are other aspects to it. You make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult, but don't make it impossible. You want the horse to find what it is that you're offering that you think is a better deal. So one day I'm on the ranch when I was still at the IAC doing some of this horsemanship, and the exercise for the day that I had some time with was, I had a gate here and I had a young horse on a halter, and I was just trying to get the horse to go on through that gate. And just patiently taking my time, just trying to send that horse through the gate. And I'd been there for Lord knows how long. It didn't seem like a long time because that's my druthers. You know, once we get all of the things that we have the opportunity to fixed, I'm gonna go back and play with horses. But my daughter comes along and she walks over here and she's watching from about where I was sitting earlier. And she, "What you doing, Dad?" And I say, "Well, sis, I'm gonna get this colt to go through that gate right there." "Oh, okay." And she's watching and she's kind of doing this. So I say, I see her looking, and pretty quick she says, "So Dad, did you ever think maybe just opening the gate a little wider?" And I said, "You know, Kelsey, I actually did. I had that thought at the beginning of this. I thought, let's just throw that gate wide open. But then I thought, man, I got this kind of time. I'm going to have that horse search for it. I'm going to have him find it." And she watched me ride the struggle bus for a little while. And I'm at this horsemanship deal for 25 years. She's never seen it done another way. So it's innate in her. And she watches for a little while longer. And I'm very patient and very calm. Patience, that's how you change things. The horse isn't bothered, it isn't sweating, it isn't worked up, but we're just not making progress. And Kelsey finally gets tired of it, and she goes over and she just drags the gate open, and magically the horse goes through. And she looks at me and says, "Did you ever think maybe the horse didn't have the same kind of time you did?" And she was right on the money. But the point of the story is, change isn't necessarily bad. And the culture that we're working to address at the FSA isn't necessarily the fault of the people that are expressing it. And we're not going to get them to come over to our side and find their way through that gate by beating them over the head with what we think we should do during our 4 years here. So we have to help them understand the why. How do you make change? You first have a why. My why is I am a child of the farm financial crisis. I've seen firsthand what it's like to watch the cows go on the trailer for the last time. And it was about this time of year. That might be what's getting to me. So I know what those farmers are feeling like. I know what your ancestors, maybe your families yourselves, have felt like. And that's my why, because it didn't have to happen. Someone could have opened the gate wider for the folks that were in control. Another thing that needs to happen to facilitate change is those on the strong side of the power dynamic have to be willing to acknowledge that there's a system that needs to be improved on. That's critical. And in the relationship with our staff in the countryside, we're sitting on the power. You come to our desk, you sit up, you do our forms. We've got to change that. We've got to empower our producers. We've got to make sure you know what we know and you know how our things work so that you come in at least as well educated. Where producers don't have the time to go through the reams of paper it takes to learn what we know, we've got to engage meaningfully with cooperators like this organization and other organizations that are represented here so that they can go along with that producer. That's honestly how I got my start, because coming out of the farm financial crisis, change was ready to happen on our place. Dad kept the land together, but we lost income for a couple years. And that caused loss of land later on in life, but we were able to get some cows there, get financed, get started off again in the 90s. And I was spending some time dropping out of the University of Minnesota Morris and found out I was going to be a dad. And I thought, well, I don't think I turned out half bad. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go on the ranch. And Dad had just told my brother and I that he had room for us. He wanted to start to step away. So we had the power dynamic necessary to facilitate the change. Next, we needed the resources. And I went to at least 6 different banks trying to get a loan to buy some cows. I had all the equipment I needed. I had someone that had weathered the farm financial crisis and come out the other side on his feet to guide me, but I could not get financed, even with a government guaranteed loan. So we went back to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I'm a Native American, if I didn't share all that with you or if it didn't come across in the deal. Went to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, talked to them about their BIA guarantee program, and I'm just not having any luck with these banks. And they said, well, we've got this other program for you to consider. And it's more of an equity infusion. And it's meant to stimulate and mitigate the risk for a producer to engage with you. So I started with a $25,000 grant from the federal government and a $75,000 direct bank loan. And I did that in 1993 when heifer calves were worth $560. I thought, this looks good. That can never go down. I'm gonna go buy me some of them. Any of you were doing cattle about that time, you know, in 94, the price of a bred heifer was about $555. So the change had started, but it had run into some challenge. And another of the things that my daughter tells me is that in order to have progressive change, in order to have ecosystem growth, she's a soil health guru. And she said, you got to have disturbance. You got to have animal impact. Well, I got the hell disturbed out of me in 1994. And the sting of having to go from bank to bank and get turned down was still with me. So when I got a chance to join the Intertribal Ag Council as a farm advocate, I jumped at it because it helped me help others avoid the same challenges that I faced. So I've spent my life doing that. And what I've found is that invariably, farmer and rancher stress, a lack of a transition, mental health issues, all tie back to finance. Do I have the resources to keep this place together, to ensure that the next generation can come along behind me, and to leave that legacy that I would like to leave, evidence that I've been here in this place? So I've made it my mission since then to talk about in every venue a new way of doing ag finance, and have the opportunity, the good Lord knows how, to be the administrator at one of the largest banks in the country. FSA has about a $31 billion portfolio in its direct and guaranteed loans. And that's where some of the change has really been challenging for us, because many of our farm loan officers come from the 80s, and they learned from the folks that were brought in during the 80s to eliminate the problem instead of work it out. In the 80s, the federal government took a decidedly different approach than this administration and this iteration of the federal government are taking to borrowers in distress. They looked out there, they saw delinquency, they said foreclosure is the solution. So we lost thousands of family farms across the country. In this administration, we have saved thousands of family farms that were in those same type of circumstances by investing in their future. That's only half of the answer. We've got to spend the rest of our time and the rest of our energy changing that so that we can avoid getting there. And the flexibility that we have to offer in our farm loan programs is bar none the best. And this is the part of the conversation where the lenders get the hair on the back of their neck standing up and they say, I don't want you all competing with us with the taxpayer dollars. We don't want to. Make the damn loan. We'll guarantee it 95%. But do it at terms that are comfortable with the producer. Because this is what's on my mind today. In the last 6 weeks, we have had young producers go to our offices, 2,100 county offices around the country that do farm service agency programming. Roughly 900 to 1,000 have a farm loan presence. Otherwise, you got to travel to another county. But 2 producers in the last 6 weeks have come to us with virtually carbon copy financial situations. And the gentleman said, land rich and cash flow poor. They're asset rich and cash flow poor. And they're victim to a lack of knowledge about what we can do and what the lender could do with our support. Around $300,000 of total debt, structured terribly, with an FSA guarantee. Lenders realizing a 5 to 10% return on that note, which is fine. I got no qualms with that. It's not the interest that upends a producer. It's the artificial rate of recapture of the initial investment. These 2 producers, around $320,000 in debt, their debt service cost this year was $235,000. Yeah, that's something. How does it get that way? Well, you got a lender who, with a government-supported guarantee, offers too short of a term for the producer to amass working capital. Because the lenders need a loan on the books. They'd rather have that than a depositor on the books because their assets and liabilities are different than ours. And we're guaranteeing it. So and both of these folks came to our team and said, I'd really like to think about doing this a different way. Is there things you can do to help? And we told them, we can't do anything to help you because you're at a bank. If you hear that from any of my team in the countryside, you email me, you call me, because that's a misinterpretation of what we're out there to do. because our statute literally says sufficient to meet the actual needs of the producer at reasonable rates and terms. And we're not trying to cut the banks out of the deal. Both of these producers, if we would have worked with the bank and said, hey, kick this out there 10 years, give them some time to get some comfort. Their annual debt service goes down from $230,000 to $50,000 without changing a single thing. And now they're a depositor. And hell, we can guarantee the loans you make with those deposits too. But it's this notion that producers are going to make bad decisions if they have the resources. So let's make sure that they're obliged somewhere. That's the big change. It's a culture change that we're working tirelessly on at the FSA. And it doesn't stop at the loan programs, but that's really where my heart is, because imagine those same producers. They both been in some drought the last couple of years. They're both cow-calf operations. Both work off the farm and are trying to raise families. Imagine if they could devote the time that they're spending on that off-farm income to their farm and pay themselves a damn wage. And that was acceptable and expected from our institutions that finance producers. Well, then Carmen has amassed the war chest that he needs so that he can continue to help folks. The folks that were on the panel, I'm super proud to be here and hear your story, because you're breaking that cycle. But you found the resources to do it. My dad found the resources to do it. When I got this job, the ethics team told me, you can keep your cattle interests, but you can't make livestock policy. And I thought, that doesn't sound like any damn fun at all. So that was our generational transition. I signed a piece of paper and just conveyed it all to Kelsey right then. Because this is too good an opportunity to pass up to really make some meaningful, long-lasting, permanent change. And if we don't go all in on it, we're missing a tremendous opportunity. What I like to leave everybody with is the notion that someday another FSA administrator may be up here in front of you all. And if they complain or whine about their job, send them back to wherever the hell they come from and tell them I'll take it back, because I'm proud to be your FSA administrator. Thank you. That what you needed?
That's exactly what we needed. Yeah. Let's take a couple of questions. We'll do threes.
I've been in the audience a lot and seen the federal officials get up here and talk and then sneak out that side door, but you got a window that isn't opening, so I'll just stay here and answer a few questions.
So it kind of, thank you, by the way.
Yes, sir.
It kind of sounded to me like you want your staff to be willing to, I don't know if they can call it refinance existing loans, but restructure a problematic debt situation. Are you getting traction amongst other state administrators to see that same kind of change happen in their districts?
Yeah, we are. And we're gaining traction in the national leadership team. And the way I framed this for them the other day when I had a chance to visit with them was, imagine your current life right now. And imagine without doing anything different, you can have $130,000 more next year at the end of the year. What would you do? Some of them said vacation. Some of them said education. Some of them said rebuild my retirement. I said, we have an opportunity to do that for these producers that fit these parameters tomorrow. Let's start. We've been at this for a long time. I mentioned change takes patience. It takes the why, but it takes patience. And that might be my only virtue is patience. So, but we could have had that conversation the day we got in the door. I wouldn't have been as ready as I am. They wouldn't have been as receptive. So we've got other state executive directors that are buying into this all in. There's a segment of the farm loan team that's skeptical about it because they're getting, their feedback is coming from the lenders. Some of them see the lender as our client instead of the producers. And I just remind them what the first word of our name is: farm, not bank. Good question.
Do you want to say your name and who you're with?
Hi, my name is Brooke Patrick. I work for Golden Sands out of Wisconsin. It's in central Wisconsin. Formerly, I did work for the Farm Service Agency for 5 years in Wapaka County.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I unfortunately left is because I felt like a lot of the funding was going to corporate farms for the disaster programs. And especially during COVID, it was really hard for me to see the guys with the private planes and the big corporate dairies get all the money, and the guy that thinned his soup for the third time that week get nothing. And I was just curious of what you're doing as the administrator, or maybe what FSA is doing to kind of change that.
You know, that's a really good question. Thank you for your service. I'm a big fan of all public servants. I really believe in it. It moves me when folks commit themselves to a higher cause, and that's what kind of everybody in this room is about, it looks like. But the administration, having Secretary Vilsack at the head of the department, was already on that path when I got here. And one of the first things the administration did was take a look at the CFAP payments and how they went out and how they were following the path of MFP payments. And we just stopped. So wait, we're going to take another look at this. So we started to take stakeholder input, listen to rooms of producers, listen to virtual Teams meetings of producers, and tried to find out where we could better target the resources than just doing that. And I think we've made tremendous headway in that. We've got some specific carve-outs of funding that we use to further assist underserved populations. That's your women, your veterans, your minority producers, your young and beginning producers. So we've made a conscious effort to serve in those places. We've also really zeroed in on urban and innovative agriculture. And one of the talking points that I never use is our increasing land access program. It's a problem that we're trying to address with the program. EFAP, MFP, you want me to tell you what them are? Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, Market Facilitation Program, I think. Yeah. The Increasing Land, Capital, and Market Access Program is a $300 million initiative to have folks like you all tell us what the solutions could be. We've got veteran coalitions, we've got some Hispanic, other underserved categories, all participating in this program, offering solutions based on what they see as the shortcomings of the system. So we're doing a lot of work in that regard. We're always hiring. The pay is still about the same, but the mission is still really good. Thanks for your time. Did you have one more?
We have one more, Amanda. I led with what you're supposed to say, your name and what organization you're with.
Hi, I'm Amanda Niggin Crowley from the Village Agricultural Cooperative in Rochester, Minnesota. We have a urban farming and incubator farm initiative, and this lovely woman next to me, Valerie, is on my team. And last week she said something that I wrote down, because she said, "We farm for the table, not for the bank." And so I'm wondering what the FSA is thinking about collaborative farming initiatives, a group of people who want to grow for their communities to feed their communities culturally specific foods, but they're not necessarily looking to be commercial farmers.
That's a really good question. And I think we've got to conceive of that, or be talking about that in terms of sustainability and sustainable harvest. You know, we've got to make sure that there's at least enough resource generated from what you're doing to be able to perpetuate that. So it's not about becoming rich or buying the next 2,000 acres, but how can we help you find a way to do what you want to do that remunerates you in some fashion so that you can do it again next year and the year after and have a runway to do this good work. Some of the things that we're doing with our food assistance programs, SNAP, WIC, you might be able to help folks in need using our money to capitalize on that and help someone in need at the same time. So there are parts of this circle that we can build out to help with what you're doing so that it is sustainable, because absent the ability to do it another year, you're going to be beholden to someone else to provide you the resources. So we've got to think creatively about how to get there. But it's a good question. I welcome feedback from you all on how we can get there.
You know, a lot of times, I don't know how many people have been to a conference before. Everybody. You're at the keynote and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I'm hungry for more answers, but I think I'm going to have to cut it there. And everyone, please give a round of applause again.
I have to say, I got teary, some of the things that you're saying, and we have just seen, you know, personally through our organization, changes in FSA since you've been there, and also I also want to thank State Executive Director Place, because change, where is she at? No. Change really is happening, and so wonderful to just have you speak like that and not do your talking points. We really appreciate it. Yeah, you did them all. So with that, we're gonna break for lunch.